Hi guys, so Hugh Merriman, who chairs the Transport Select Committee, had, let's say, a difference of opinion when it came to strike action and how it was resolved when he spoke to a representative of the RMT union. Tory MP Merriman tried to suggest that strikers had failed and then returned to work, but Eddie Dempsey, the Senior Assistant General Secretary of the RMT, who we've seen before, pushed back and explained it was more of a case of fire and rehire. Have a listen.
Because I remember RMT members were absolutely furious because effectively that was their job, their strike guarantee, that actually if the train didn't operate because the conductor wasn't operating it, then actually it wouldn't move. But as soon as the drivers take that control over, that power is lost. I mean, how did you feel about that? Because your members didn't get a 28.5% pay rise. In fact, they may have lost their job.
No, what happened to our members is they were faced with a version of fire and rehire. It was nothing to do with what the drivers did or didn't do. Our members were told, here's a new contract of employment. That means you'll work in a different role. You'll sign that new contract of employment or you will leave the industry. That's what happened to our people, and that's how that dispute ended.
But the dispute ended because the drivers ended up driving the trains that your members said, and they were the first to take action.
The dispute ended for our members when they were issued new contracts of employment and said you will sign that new contract or you will be unemployed. That's how our dispute ended.
The dispute I'm a Southern MP, so I remember it very, very well.
I remember
the dispute ended because ASLEF drivers drove the train. If they hadn't, then actually the dispute would have carried on. And
the dispute probably would not have carried on because the workers would have been laid off. They were given a contract, or they were given a condition: sign this contract or you lose your job. That's it. And part of that contract was doing something different than what they were originally hired to do. The company said, like it or lump it, this is the new condition. If you don't want to respect that, then go away. Leave the industry, as Eddie had said here. This is completely different to the idea that the unions failed here. And what Hugh Merriman is trying to do is he's trying to suggest that, look, you can go on strike, but it fails every time. And he's going to reinforce that point in just a moment.
The trains wouldn't run.
Those trains, the agreement is they manned with safety critical staff.
We would have continued in strike action, but what we faced there
Wouldn't have made any difference because they would have driven the trains.
You might say so, but we would think differently. What happened then and what is happening now is people in my industry are facing fire and rehire, and everyone in this place condemned it when it was P&O, but now it's being done to railway workers. All we seem to hear is people talking about, well, let's bring more laws in. Let's criminalise the act of dissent against low wages and against being made unemployed.
100%. Remember P&O? Every Tory MP standing up and condemning that ferry company. But when it comes to rail workers, well, we need to bring in legislation. And it's not even just the Tories. There was a Liberal Democrat talking about how, well, maybe the government should bring in the army to deal with to break the strike. I think it was Eddie Dempsey that was responding to that as well. When it came to P&O is bad. When it comes to the train and the railway workers, the train drivers and the railway workers, we need to break the union strike. We need to force them back into doing their jobs. And if we have to bring in the army, we'll do that as well.
That's what happened to us on Southern, fire and rehire. We were given new contracts and told, sign that, or go and sign on at the
which is why I was amazed that you were so supportive of how it came to an end, because I felt that your members got taken out by ASLEF.
I think fire and rehire should be illegal in this country. Yeah. So I wasn't happy about how it ended. It was disgraceful.
And so the other thing I just wanted to put to you, because again, touching on the Southern train dispute, it was a big dispute. People couldn't get to work. It had a massive impact. But it was effective in terms of a dispute because the point I'd make is there was a very, very generous pay rise that Mr. Whelan was able to negotiate. But the issue now is, are you concerned that you will not have the same bargaining power over passengers? So take the first day of strikes when there was also strikes on the London Underground as well as rail. So, you would think things would be really paralysed. TfL wrote to us and said that their bus patronage was just 92% of pre-COVID levels. And you would think that the buses would be absolutely crowded, but people work from home. It doesn't impact them as much. It impacts certain people, key workers, perhaps, but not others. So do you feel there's a danger that this strike will carry on running because it doesn't actually bring the workforce to its knees because people can work from home and have learned how to do that from the pandemic?
as I said before, what he's trying to do here is he's trying to suggest that, well, look, you can go on strike, but it doesn't really impact people, doesn't really affect their lives. So it's all a bit pointless, isn't it? He's not saying this because he actually cares about the workers or he's trying to provide them with advice. He's a Tory, okay? The Tories are anti-union and they will use whatever weapons they can against the trade unions. They want to weaken them where possible because they're on the side of the business owners. They're on the side of the people who are making and raking in massive profits. And the same people who are asking the workers to take a pay cut, basically. You know, there's a cost of living crisis. Inflation is running at around 10%. Anything less than 10% is a pay cut.
Well, I'm not so certain about that. The money that's been spent on protecting profits of private companies during strike action could easily have been put into resolving this dispute. And the money that has cost the economy more broadly has been difficult, I accept that, but our strike action is effective. On the run up to a strike, people say it's going to be Armageddon. We're going to shut the country down, there won't be food on the shelves. When we take the strike action, people say, well, it wasn't effective at all. Everyone was on the trains and no one's using it.
That's a very, very fair point. I'm trending more to the latter in terms of actually you don't have the power to stop the economy in the way that you did. So therefore, is there a danger that you've rather over a chance to arm?
Wages have been falling in this country for 30 years. They've not kept up with inflation. At the same time, private profits have really not exceeded inflation. There was some research done by Unite that said the FTSE 350 companies, their profits are up 73% since 2019.
I gave the figures for train drivers of getting a 39% pay rise over the last 10 years, when inflation's run at 20%. At the
same time, there's been a 73% increase in private profits for people at the top.
Specifically to rail, they're not being paid.
The point I'm making is everyone in this country is feeling a pinch. Enough is enough, and it's about time that people made it clear where they stand on this. And I think people across the economy, nurses, postal workers, railway workers, are all about to stand together and say, we deserve a pay rise in this country. And that's coming. So it's not about whether or not we're just as effective as we were 3 years ago. There is a bigger thing happening in this country that people don't seem to realise. And that is people are not prepared to accept any longer that they've got to continue to be made poorer so that people at the top can continue to rake in profits. That's over, and that is going to change over the next period.
Agree with him 100%. You can't expect people, and you can't expect people just to sit by as they get poorer and poorer. As I said before, inflation running at 10, maybe even more than 10% towards the end of the year. And anything lower than 10% is a pay cut, is people getting poorer, while at the same time these companies are being bailed out by the government and they're making massive profits. You can't allow this thing to go on. You will have civil unrest. And the difference between strikes today and strikes in the past is that when rail workers were going on strike, it was about issues that concerned them individually or as a group. But today, the reason they're going on strike is because everyone is suffering. Everyone is apart from MPs, perhaps, and members of the House of Lords and Tory donors or whatever. But the ordinary people are feeling the pinch. And it doesn't matter if they're rail workers or postal workers or teachers or members of the NHS or whoever. They all understand that when somebody goes on strike, they should be supported. Things have changed. It's not like, okay, they're gone on strike, they're asking for some more money, they'll get a bit more money and then they'll go away and things go back to normal. No, those days are over until the government really understand what's happening, really deal with it. And if you look at what's happening within the Conservative Party, Boris Johnson is a lame duck. He's doing nothing. He's spinning his wheels at the moment. And his replacement is talking about tax cuts. Not tax cuts for ordinary people, tax cuts for the mega rich. Tax cuts for these businesses. Not dealing with the cost of living crisis. It's insane. There is a massive cost of living crisis and none of the candidates are talking about fixing it. They're more concerned with winning within the Conservative Party. That's their primary concern. And they're moving further and further to the right. And if you bring up issues like this, I imagine they talk about crushing these unions, not actually dealing with the concerns that they face. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think about all of this. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.